Terrifying secrets exposed. Boy stumbles upon sinister rustling in haunted cornfield. True story. The evening sun dipped low, casting eerie shadows over the cornfields as Jake, a 12-year-old boy, stepped outside. While other kids pixelated their lives in video games, he felt an unsettling tug. Whispers of folklore danced in his ears, tales of spirits protecting this land. Then he heard its sinister rustling from the depths of the cornfield. His heart raced as the sound echoed through the stillness, a warning wrapped in a shroud of mystery. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, he ventured toward the rustling, unknowingly crossing into a world of darkness that had long been hidden behind the veil of familiar faces. Each step felt like a descent into a nightmare. The warm, humid air clung to his skin as shadows elongated around him. The comforting scent of wet earth morphed into something acrid and foreboding. The rustling grew louder, almost alive, as Jake realized just how lost he was in this daunting labyrinth of towering cornstalks. A chill ran down his spine, whispering that there were secrets best left forgotten. There, among tangled weeds, he stumbled upon the crumbling remnants of an old farmhouse, an eerie relic of lives once lived, now buried under local indifference. The walls groaned with the weight of untold stories. Every heartbeat reverberated in his ears. He peered through broken windows, the feeling of being watched creeping over him like a thick fog, and then, a discovery that would change everything. Beneath a layer of autumn leaves, a shape lay hidden, a body. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. Panic tore through him. This was no urban legend or display of faded posters. Jake's innocent quest had turned to horror. The boy who lay beneath the leaves was once a living child, a soul lost to the town's dark truths, now tangled in corruption. His heart pounded violently against his rib cage. Who would hurt a child? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weight of his discovery was suffocating, pressing down like the heavy humidity surrounding him. Shadows lengthened, twisting into grotesque shapes as he felt unseen eyes lurking from the darkness. Who could he trust now? His neighbors, once comforting figures, morphed into suspects. If this was truly someone's secret, who knew how deep it went? The rustling around him grew more frantic, almost furious, drowning out the sound of his own thoughts. Jake's instincts screamed at him to run. But where? The corn loomed around him, an endless maze of terror. The shapes flickered in his peripheral vision. Panic clawed at his throat, forcing him to push forward, desperate to escape the horrors now clawing at his mind. Heart racing, he glanced back only to find shadows crossing through the corn, dark shapes weaving between the stalks. The whispers of the past grew louder, more haunting, tightening around him. He was no longer just a boy exploring a field, he was a witness, a danger, and he couldn't shake the dread that he might be the next to vanish into the soil of this cursed land. The darkness reigned, and as he sprinted toward the edge, the cornstalks rustled purposefully, as if urging him to join them, to become another secret buried in their depths. Would he make it out alive, or would he too be lost amidst the whispers of the haunted cornfield? Jake's feet pounded against the earth, a frantic rhythm that pulsed with his racing heart. Each step propelled him deeper into the chaos of rustling leaves and shadowy figures, threatening to swallow him whole. The darkness behind him seemed alive, hungry, lashing out with whispers that intertwined in the air, and snaring him like a web. As he plunged further into the field, despair clawed at him. What had he just uncovered? The lifeless form beneath the leaves haunted his mind, a ghost that wasn't just a lost child's body but a warning of the darkness that loomed, ready to claim him next. All those stories, were they more than just tales? He wondered if the rumors of the haunted farmland were rooted in something tangible, something sinister. Suddenly, the whispering ceased, replaced by a heavy silence that felt menacing. Jake slowed, glancing around. What happened to the rustling? The stillness felt wrong, like a predator poised to strike. Was it watching him? A bead of sweat rolled down his back, making his shirt cling to his skin. He took another step, the quiet weighing heavily on his shoulders, that he spotted movement to his right, a flash of dark fabric. His breath caught in his throat as he turned. Nothing. Just stalks swaying in an unseen breeze. More fearful than curious now, Jake felt a surge of anger. He was not just a boy wandering through a cornfield, he was a survivor. He would not vanish like the others. Pushing past the panic, Jake decided to retrace his steps, heading back toward the farmhouse. Maybe if he found a way out, he could alert someone, anyone, to the horror he'd discovered. Heart thumping, he rushed through the stalks, their serrated edges scratching at his arms as he moved. He reached the farmhouse, panting, and pressed his hands against the crumbling walls. The wood felt strange, cold and alive, pulsing with menace. As he peered through the broken window, shapes flickered in the corners of his vision. Shadows danced wildly, whispering his name in tortured tones. Was it his imagination? Or were the souls of the lost still trapped, begging for release? Just then, a flash of movement yanked his attention. Outside in the field, a figure crossed awkwardly between rows of corn, not quite human, yet unmistakably there. Jake's stomach twisted. He could see only the outline, but something about its movement sent fear coursing through him. It stopped, facing him, and he felt cold dread soak into his bones. Jake! The voice that echoed out was familiar, comforting yet chilling. It was the voice of his neighbor, Mrs. Hargrove. But it was wrong. Her tone dripped with something dark, a warning wrapped in a snare. Come closer, we need to talk. A surge of instinct kicked in. He knew Mrs. Hargrove. She had watched him grow up, brought cookies to his house. But he also knew the stories, not just her brow-raising tales, but the whispers of secrets held close to her chest. Could she be involved in this horror? Torn between assurance and dread, Jake hesitated. The figure beckoned him closer, its features obscured in shadow. Was that a smile curling there? Disoriented, Jake blinked, and for a split second, he couldn't tell if it was really her or another specter, another trap. He stepped back, but the rustling started again, louder this time, thrumming with fury. The figures behind him in the cornfield began emerging, dark shapes closing in, pushing him toward the beckoning figure of Mrs. Hargrove. He found himself paralyzed, torn between the urge to flee and the suffocating pull of that sanctimonious command. Jake! The name slipped through clenched teeth like a ghostly invitation. A split-second decision. With every ounce of courage, Jake turned away from the temptation of familiarity, fleeing back into the maze of cornstalks, knowing all too well that whatever was out there wasn't done with him yet. But a thought lingered, echoing like the shadows behind him. What secrets were entwined with his neighbor's past? Would he uncover the truth before it was too late, or would he merely be another name whispered among the rustling leaves? The stalks loomed over Jake as he sprinted through the corn, the towering plants like sentinels watching his every move. His heart thundered in his chest, pounding with a mix of adrenaline and primal fear. He could feel the shadows weaving in and out of his peripheral vision, chasing him with relentless intent. Just as he thought he could escape, the whispering returned, louder, more urgent. It wrapped around him like a vine, pulling him back to that harvest of lost souls. In a burst of panic, he ducked under a low-hanging branch and came to an abrupt halt. Sweat dripped down his face, stinging his eyes, blinding him for just a moment. Then, the air shifted, thickening with an unnatural chill, and he heard it, a soft, mocking laugh carried on the wind. It sent icy needles creeping along his spine. He peered between the warped, green stalks, hoping for a glimpse of safety. Instead, he saw her, Mrs. Hargrove, standing still in the field, an eerie smile plastered on her face, eyes glinting like polished stones. Jake, she called again, but this time her voice twisted like a snake, sinister and hollow. Why are you running? We've so much to discuss. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving. If he looked back, he might be lost in her gaze forever. What lies had she spun beneath that calm exterior? His confusion deepened with each twitch of the shadows around him. He stumbled back, turning on his heels, plunging deeper into the rows of corn, hoping to outdistance whatever darkness lingered in that wretched field, but the corn was endless, a maddening maze of desperation. He could hear the footsteps now tiny, rushing, scraping. He ducked down, hiding behind a large clump of plants, breath shallow. They were there, closing in, the unseen figures stalking him, their whispers merging into a single, haunting crescendo. "Join us," they sang, "don't resist, surrender, find peace." The words wrapped around him, silencing his thoughts. He closed his eyes against the voices swirling in his mind. This was wrong, so wrong. They were tempting him with promises he knew were traps. He wanted to scream, to shake free from the invisible hold that gripped him, but found himself immobilized, caught in the web of those dark entreaties. Suddenly, a rustle nearby pulled him back. Out of breath, he opened his eyes only to find himself face to face with another figure, someone smaller and slumped against the stalks, too weak to stand. It was a child, dirt-covered and hollow-eyed, the kind of look that only accompanies loss. "Help me," the boy whispered, frail as a wisp. Jake felt the weight of the world press on his chest. This child, a new ghost in his already haunted life, were they victims like him? Or guardians of this dreadful place? The delicate line between survival and compliance blurred even further in that moment. He looked back to where Mrs. Hargrove stood motionless, her grinning shadow stretching towards him like an omen. The silhouettes in the cornstalks began to chant in a language of despair, the chorus beckoning him to abandon all hope. The field warped, he felt it pulse with life apt to consume him whole. Jake turned to run again, but as he stumbled away, the boy's voice called after him, "Don't leave me. You have to stay." It's the only way. He was torn. Should he save himself, or aid this lost soul? Every choice led to darkness, but Jake had to decide. With each labored breath, he felt the chains of his fate tightening. Before he could fully grasp what to do, a cold hand gripped his ankle, dragging him down. "Join us," came the whisper again, and the laughter rippled through the corn. As they closed in, clawing shadows threatening to engulf everything, Jake realized, the true horror of this place was not the tales told, but the choices that lay before him. What path would he choose this time? With a final, desperate yank, he vanished into the deeper darkness of the cornfield, leaving the question of survival hanging heavily in the air. Would he confront the ghosts waiting for him, or join their ranks before the night was through? Jake's heart raced as the cold grip on his ankle tightened, pulling him downward. The shadows enveloped him, merging with the whispers that droned incessantly, drowning out his thoughts. Panic clawed at his chest, and the cornfield pulsed around him as he fought against the unseen force. With a surge of adrenaline, he kicked hard, breaking free of the icy fingers trying to drag him under. "Don't leave me," the boy cried out, his voice laced with desperation. Jake turned back to face the child, fear mixing with a flicker of determination. He could not just abandon him, not when the terror surged alongside him, as tangible as the earth beneath their feet. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice cracking, but the boy only looked back with eyes wide and pleading, the shadows pulling at him too. With a deep breath, Jake lunged, grabbing the boy's hand. He tried to haul him up away from the menacing soil that threatened to swallow them both. But the boy felt lighter than air, and Jake could sense the looming darkness around them thickening like smoke. "Let go," the boy shrieked suddenly, his gaze terrified. "It's too late for me, save yourself." Nothing that came from the child's mouth made sense. The trees were alive with whispers, the laughter echoing like the shrieking wind, swirling like a cyclone around them. Jake blinked away the haze clouding his mind. He couldn't leave. He wouldn't leave. What kind of monster let fear decide who lived and who perished? Yet every second he lingered drew him deeper into despair. He could feel it, something quivering in the earth, hungry for their souls. It wasn't just the boy who was trapped, it was all of them, lost in the cornfield's endless snare. "Come with me. We can get out," he shouted, his voice a mere echo against the chorus of despair. Only the boy stared back, lips trembling, the shadows at his feet creeping higher, wrapping around his legs like tendrils of sorrow. "Join us," the whispers began again, louder now, a maddening song luring him into submission. They promised him safety, peace. All he had to do was give in. "No!" Jake screamed, shaking his head violently as if that could ward off the words wrapping around him, squeezing tighter. There had to be a way out. That he could see a flash of movement up ahead, a brief glimpse back toward Mrs. Hargrove. She was gliding forward, her smile sharp and unyielding. It felt as if she were pulling the strings, orchestrating chaos. Like a puppet master entwined with lost souls, she beckoned him with a wave. "Jake," she called again, her voice dripping with a sickening sweetness, "you need to choose. Join us, sweet child. It's the only way to survive." He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down mercilessly on him. Surrender to the darkness, become a part of this wretched field? Or fight to the bitter end with nothing but his human spirit? In that heartbeat of hesitation, the shadows surged forward, not just around him but for the boy too. Jake, desperation fueling him, twisted around, eyes wild. "Hold on tight." With a mighty pull, he wrenched the boy from the ground, urging them into a sprint across the rows of corn, the sounds of laughter transforming into shrieks of indignation from the shadows closing in behind them. "Run!" Jake shouted, every ounce of fear igniting his movements. But as they dashed deeper into the labyrinth, he felt the cold grasp of despair reaching for them from every direction, as if the very land they were on were alive and resentful. Yet then, among the cacophony, a new voice broke through, dry and raspy, riddled with an unnatural echo. "She knows where you are, she's waiting for you both." Jake's heart lurched. Who was this new presence? Could they trust it? But the boy beside him didn't falter. He looked up, determination shining through his hollow eyes. "We have to keep moving. If she finds us, what's the plan?" Jake gasped, his lungs burning as he pushed forward. All he knew was they couldn't stop. There was nothing left to lose but their own lives. As the chorus grew louder, shadows reaching for their very souls, Jake tightened his grip on the boy's hand. The question hung between them like a storm cloud: what kind of monsters awaited them in the heart of the cornfield? And was the answer truly waiting for them, or was it already inside? As blessed escape lay just beyond the field's edge, Jake glanced back one last time, tension coiling in the pit of his stomach. But every step they took sent echoes of dread crashing against him like icy waves. Just then, Jake heard something, a whisper, soft and sweet, calling his name. "Jake, come to me." And as he stumbled forward into the unknown, he took a deep breath, the shadows at their heels whispering promises of things he dared not imagine. What would he find waiting at the edge of darkness? The air grew thick as they sprinted through the cornfield, breaths coming in ragged gasps. Jake felt the boy's tiny hands slipping in his grip, the weight of fear making every movement heavy. Shadows twisted and danced around them, retaliating against their defiance. Every row of corn felt alive, reaching with bent stalks, hungry to pull them back into its embrace. "Keep going," Jake urged, though his own voice was barely above a whisper. Behind them, the laughter had transformed into a monstrous roar, echoing across the open land. It reverberated in his chest, threatening to rattle his bones. "Look!" the boy yelled, pointing ahead. "We can hide there." Jake followed the boy's gaze to a dilapidated shack, shrouded in vines and surrounded by creeping shadows. It was barely visible, but the outline beckoned like a refuge amidst the chaos. "Let us go," he urged, dodging through the corn, his heart pounding against the alarm bells ringing in his mind. They reached the shack, and he threw open the creaky door, urging the boy inside. As they entered, darkness enveloped them, the air stale and fetid. A single beam of moonlight streamed through a crack, illuminating dust motes swirling like tiny specters. "What if she finds us here?" the boy whispered, trembling against the wall, wide-eyed and terrified. Jake took a deep breath, forcing his racing pulse to slow. "We need to make a plan," he said, though his mind was clouded with panic. They were not safe. He could still feel the shadows lurking just outside the door, waiting for the moment they would lose hope. "Can you see anything?" The boy squinted into the darkness. "There are things on the shelves." He moved cautiously, fingers brushing against the surfaces until he grabbed hold of something cold and metallic. A lantern. Good. Jake could only pray it worked. "Light it." With trembling hands, the boy struck the flint, and a small flame flickered to life. The fiery glow flickered around them, illuminating dust and cobwebs, revealing how truly forgotten this place was. But it was better than total darkness. Then Jake noticed a strange, thorny vine creeping along the floor, slithering toward them. It pulsed, like a heartbeat. He stepped back, panic surging anew. "What the hell is that?" The boy stared in horror, his earlier resolve crumbling. "It's alive." Suddenly, the whispers returned, sharp and piercing, now mingled with a taunting glee. "You think you can hide from her?" They sang, curling around them like a noose. "She sees you. She always sees." "Shut up!" Jake shouted, fire sparking in his chest. But the shadows laughed, thickening like a fog, swirling around the shack, panic clawed at his throat. "We have to get out of here." The boy trembled, the lantern shaking in his grasp. "What if it's too late?" "No!" Jake roared, clenching his fists. "We fight." As shadows pressed in, Jake dashed to the door, yanking it open. The moonlight spilled in like a lifeline, but it was so dim, so frail against the engulfing darkness. "We can't let it win." He shoved the boy in front of him, urging him back out into the cornfield. But as they stepped out, a sudden chilling breeze swept over them, carrying with it a sickening stench like decay. The laughter returned, this time louder, a cacophony of voices that clawed at Jake's sanity. He could feel them digging into his mind, twisting his memories into something unrecognizable. The ground trembled beneath his feet, corn rattling and thrashing as if alive. "Run!" He screamed again, gripping the boy's arm. "Run!" They tore through the rows once more, pursued by the relentless whispers. "Where do we go?" the boy cried, lost in the growing sea of panic. Jake's mind raced as dread intensified. The field felt like a living maze, and every corner they turned seemed to draw them deeper into its den of horrors. A fleeting thought crossed his mind: if they could get to the farmhouse at the edge of the field, they might find help, but the way was riddled with treachery, lined with shadows eager to ensnare them. Without warning, the path ahead morphed into a wall of darkness, an unyielding barrier blocking escape. The boy yanked on Jake's sleeve. "What do we do?" Jake's heart sank. "We have to face it," he said, his voice shaking but determined. "Whatever's waiting for us, we confront it." He squared his shoulders. Shadows writhed around him, but he took a step forward and then another. Calm washed over him as he turned, deciding to face whatever lay ahead, but what he saw made his stomach drop. In the shadows that surrounded them stood figures, cloaked in darkness, with eyes that gleamed like living coals. And at that moment, a silence fell, thick and heavy, broken only by the low whisper of a voice that floated through the air. "You entered my realm, Jake, and now you must choose." Fear gripped him anew, making his blood run cold. What choice would he face? As he stood there, the first figure stepped forward, illuminated only by the faintest glint of light from the lantern behind them. Darkness swelled, and with it came an almost palpable fear. "Choose wisely, or you'll never leave." And in that agonizing heartbeat, as shadows enveloped them, Jake realized this was only the beginning of a reckoning far worse than he had ever imagined. What lay ahead was no longer just a question of escape, but a confrontation with shadows that craved more than simply lives, they wanted souls. What choice did he really have? The figures towered above them, cloaked in a darkness that seemed sentient, a living void hungry for despair. Jake's heart thundered so loudly he feared they could hear it. The lantern flickered uncertainly, casting sporadic light that danced between the shadows and the fear lurking deep in his gut. "Choose," the voice whispered again, smoother this time, almost seductive in its threat. The first figure stepped forward, its features ominously vague, merging with the darkness. Yet, it had a shape, many shapes, each indistinct but all radiating malice. "What do you want from us?" Jake cried, adrenaline surging as if it could mask the growing cold coiling in his chest. "The soul of the child," it replied, the words slithering through the air with a chilling satisfaction. "Or your own?" "No," Jake shouted, panic igniting the flames of fury within him. "You can't have either. We'll fight." The boy clutched Jake's leg, eyes wide and teeming with terror. "Jake, what if they take me?" Panic surged anew, washing over him like icy water. "They won't. I promise," he yelled, even as his mind whirled with uncertainty. The figures seemed to shift as they laughed, their voices blending into a hurricane of mockery that filled the air. Shadows stretched in every direction, thickening around them. Jake felt engulfed, as if the very ground was consuming them. "Choose," the voice coiled around him again, this time echoing from multiple throats. The pressure grew heavier, as if invisible hands were squeezing the breath from his lungs. "Jake," the boy's voice broke through the madness. "Are you going to let them take me?" A vision flashed in Jake's mind, witnessing a cloak envelop the boy, hearing him scream as the darkness devoured him whole. It sent a wave of fury through Jake, igniting a fire fueled by love and desperation. "No. Never," he shouted, clenching his fists. But what could they do against them? The lantern sputtered ominously. Its light drew even further away, as shadows crept closer. "We will feed on you both," one figure hissed, advancements shrouded in the same malevolent calm. "Choice is merely an illusion." But Jake could see the boy's eyes, wide with fear yet laced with trust. "We fight," he yelled, bracing himself for what came next. "Whatever it takes." As he faced the towering figures, he felt a flicker of hope pulse inside him, the boy's tiny hand in his, their spirits intertwined, igniting a surge of defiance. Then the figure lunged. Claws of darkness reached for them, but Jake reacted without thought. He hurled the lantern forward, and it shattered against the nearest figure, bursting into a flare of light. The darkness screamed, recoiling, and for a moment clarity returned, a stark white brilliance cutting through the shadows. Jake grabbed the boy, turning to run, forcing them forward against the scared chaos. The light revealed paths, once hidden outlines of an escape threatening to devour them whole, yet even in that moment, a new whisper nestled in his ear, softer and more sinister, promising despair. "You cannot escape the choice you've made." With adrenaline driving him, they darted through the field, but the laughter of shadows thrummed all around, taunting and lingering. "Run!" Jake shouted, dragging the boy along, but the corn reached out as if it wanted to snatch them back, to weave them into its frayed history. Behind them, the shadows lunged again, another figure, so fast, it was a blur. "You will pay for your defiance." A voice rang out, splitting the air, echoing ominously. Breathless, heart-hammering, Jake tried to focus on the fractured light overhead. Each step felt like a warp in reality, the reshaping of their fates shadowed in malice. "Don't stop!" he yelled, terror twisting through him. And then, far ahead, he caught sight of a break in the cornfield, a narrow glimmer of moonlight shining upon an untouched path. The farmhouse stood like a beacon, but the closer they got, the more shadows loomed, crawling to block their way, hungry for their fear. "Faster!" Jake urged, and somehow he mustered strength from the depth of his desperation. They breached the tall stalks, and suddenly the narrow path widened into an open space. But there, before them, something sinister lay waiting, a figure dripping with darkness, eyes glowing like embers. "Your choice is still binding," it whispered, the air thick with malice. "Can you escape what you have chosen?" Jake knew their only way out lay ahead, but now the shadows clustered tighter, a pulsating mass ready to strike. An icy breath slid over him, freezing the momentum. A desperate blaze of hope ignited within him, barely strong enough to face the monster before them. But what choice would lead him to salvation? With an ominous crackle, the darkness stirred. He could feel its breath on his back. Together or apart? It whispered, the question lingering dangerously in the air. Jake's heart pounded with uncertainty as he faced down the encroaching terror. What would the next choice cost? Jake froze, the air thickening around him like molasses. Shadows twisted and writhed at the edges of his vision, hungry and restless, whispering of dread and despair. Together or apart? The words dripped with malevolence, infecting his mind like venom. The boy clutched Jake's leg tighter, small whimpers escaping his trembling lips. "I don't want to be taken." The innocence in his voice pierced through the looming darkness, fueling Jake's desperation. "No. I'll never let that happen," Jake shouted, forcing his voice to stay steady. He stared at the figure before them, its form shifting as if made from smoke. The glowing eyes felt like embers burning into his soul, and the laughter, oh, the laughter. It felt like it was eating away at his sanity. "We're not afraid," Jake yelled, his voice wavering. Each word pushed back the terror, just a fraction, yet the shadows crept inward, tightening their grip. "Fear binds you," the figure hissed, drawing closer. "Separate, and you will learn the depths of your true choice." A chill ran through Jake's spine. "No!" he screamed, gripping the boy's hand as if it were a lifeline. The flickering light from the lantern dimmed, casting longer shadows that danced behind them like dark fingers reaching out in earnest. "Choose." The voice echoed again, more demanding now, filling the night with a grating urgency. "What is your true desire?" Jake's heart thrummed in his chest. If they separated, would the boy's fate rest solely in Jake's hands? Could he outrun the darkness alone? The thought twisted his gut, sending nausea rolling through him. "Together!" Jake shouted, as much for himself as for the boy. "We'll always stay together." The very declaration felt like a beacon amidst the swirling fear. He tugged the boy closer, resolutely facing the shadow. Together the figure cackled, the sound morphed into a chorus of laughter, mocking and cruel. The darkness swelled, almost palpable, a thick blanket suffocating everything around them. And then, as if responding to their defiance, shadows erupted from the ground, pulling at Jake's feet like roots from a tree, trying to bind him in place. "You will yield." One figure howled, clawing fingers reaching out to ensnare them. "No!" Jake screamed again as panic surged through him. He focused on the boy's face, trying to ground himself in that innocent trust shining brightly amidst the darkness. "Hold on." With that, Jake flung himself backward, pulling the boy with him. The surrounding shadows screeched in outrage, a cacophony of hisses and whispers that felt like blades sliding against his skin. But in that surging moment of desperation, he felt a warmth aglow building between him and the boy, a connection fortified by fear and determination. "Watch!" Jake shouted, raising the remnants of the shattered lantern. "This will not end here." The darkness hesitated, flickering as the shards caught the moonlight. Jake could almost feel the shadows recoil, and in that heartbeat of hope, he hurled the broken pieces forward. They sailed through the air like stars, scattering into shimmering dust, momentarily blinding the figures. "Run!" he commanded. The boy reacted instinctively, kicking into gear. They tore through the labyrinth of corn, moving faster, fueled by the sliver of light that guided them. Breathing rough and ragged, they raced down the path, but the laughter remained, an ever-present taunt echoing close behind. But as they sprinted, an unsettling thought burrowed itself deep in Jake's mind. What if the path led them deeper into the trap? What if they ran straight into more darkness? With each step, the shadows chased relentless, hungry, stirring in a claustrophobic rhythm. Fear twisted in Jake's gut again, a wrestling match between hope and despair. "Jake! Please!" The boy's voice rang out, and Jake turned just in time to see one shadow veer dangerously close, fangs snapping as they dashed past. "Stay with me," he yelled back, heart pounding painfully against his ribs, but the figures shifted, struggling to slide through the fractured light. He could see more figures emerging, forming a wall of darkness ahead, crawling from every corner. "Only one can survive this night," the chilling voice echoed, a murmur laced with cruel excitement. "What do we do?" Jake gasped, every ounce of courage faltering. And in that moment of climactic uncertainty, as they flanked an opening beneath a warped tree branch, the shadows coiled tighter, enveloping them in fear. "Choose, or lose everything." The whisper grew louder, threatening to swallow them whole. Jake's mind raced what held the true weight of freedom. Would escape come at the cost of losing the boy? With the encroaching darkness crashing around them, Jake reached deep within, trying to find the will to fight back against inevitable despair. What choice lay before him now? And would he still have the strength to make it? "Jake!" The boy's voice trembled, straining against the cacophony of shadows closing in. Jake's heart kicked harder in his chest, the rhythm loud enough to drown out everything else. The thick air pressed against him like a weight, smothering. "Keep moving," Jake barked, pulling the boy tight against him. The whispers surged and parted, a dark sea around them. Crouching lower, they scrambled through the twisted stalks of corn, each rustle sounding like a warning bell clamoring for attention. But fear drove them deeper, heartbeats synchronizing in panic. "Look!" The boy pointed, eyes wide, his small finger trembling toward a faint glimmer on the ground ahead. It shimmered like a mirage caught in this hellish landscape. Jake squinted, straining to make sense of the sight. "Is it?" Hope flickered, but a cold wave of dread crashed over him. It felt too good, too inviting. No! It could be a trap. But the boy tugged at him, pulling forward, desperation etched into his little features. "We have to see." Jake hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn back. The shadows danced, restless and eager. In the distance, something slithered through the stalks, emitting a low growl that raised the hair on the back of his neck. "Stay close," he whispered, voice laced with urgency. As they approached the glimmer, it resolved into a small shard of the lantern, its sharp edge sparkling under the moonlight. Jake pressed a finger to his lips. Quiet. He glanced around, shadows swirling, looming like ominous specters. He raised the shard, reflecting the dim light as a desperate beacon. "We can use this," he murmured, but uncertainty gnawed at him. Would this be their salvation or their downfall? "We have to get out, Jake," the boy begged, another tremor in his voice as a dark blob shifted dangerously close, almost grazing Jake's shoulder. Fear washed over him, a tidal wave of survival instincts crashing through his every thought. They needed to act fast. "Right. Let us go." He pivoted on his heels, adrenaline surging as he grabbed the boy's hand. Another echo of laughter pierced the air, cruel and heartless, ripping through the stillness. Shadows flared, beckoning them to turn back. But Jake surged forward, determination flooding his veins. As they slipped back into the corn rows, the laughter morphed into hisses of disdain. "You cannot escape. Given it's only a matter of time." Fury ignited within Jake. "No!" he shouted, voice raw as he fought against the despair that hung low like mists. "I want to lose him. We'll find a way." The path began to twist, unsettling Jake's footing. Each step felt unsteady, as if the world around them was shifting, just out of reach from safety. But the boy tugged at him, urging him forward. "Don't let it take me, please." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. The shadows surged upward, relentless, claws of night grasping at their ankles. They stumbled, barely holding on to their footing, the children's whispers morphing into a pleading chorus that echoed in the dark. "Choose, choose." Jake squeezed the boy's hand tighter. "Stay with me," he yelled, drawing strength from the little one beside him. But the shadows widened, creating an abyss, an inescapable void filled with insatiable longing. His throat felt dry as he registered the encroaching presence of what was once a frightened corner of the cornfield. An overwhelming thought crashed over him as he spun around, anger mingling with fear. "You'll never take him." Fear and defiance swirled in a cyclone of chaos, and for the first time, Jake felt the reality of his predicament uncoil like a serpent ready to strike. Everything is on the line now. The figure from the shadows stretched its limbs, growing in size, leering with a malevolence that clawed at Jake's sanity. "What will you sacrifice?" it hissed, the children's whispering growing louder, drowning out reason. Jake's heart raced, and his grip slipped momentarily as darkness swept through their formation. The boy's fearful face looked up at Jake, eyes wide, his breath visible in the chilling air. "Jake! They're right there!" the boy cried, trembling as shadows flickered angrily, curling like smoke around them. How many choices lay before him? How much would he risk? With shadows wrapping tighter around them, Jake's breath caught in his throat, wrapping him in a noose of horror. Could he fight against centuries of darkness and save the boy? Or would his second chance slip through his fingers into nothingness? "Go!" he shouted, pushing the boy ahead of him towards a narrow gash in the corn wall that led to a murky break in the field. "Hurry!" But as the boy hesitated, looking back, Jake felt the darkness envelop him, pulling tighter. Their path blurred around them, reality bending under the sinister weight of their fear. Jake's scream ripped through the night as they teetered on the edge of despair. And then, everything went quiet. What choice would he make as the chilling darkness held him at bay? The cold shudder of silence settled, thick and oppressive, wrapping Jake in a cocoon of dread. Time stretched, and for that fleeting moment, the darkness around him pulled away as if it held its breath. He could feel every heartbeat in his chest, echoing like a drum in the barren quiet, pulling him deeper into despair. "Jake," the boy whispered, his voice barely cutting through the mass of shadow. Anxiety threaded each sound, rising up like a wall between them and the light they desperately sought. Jake turned, face tight, staring into the enveloping blackness. The boy was so close, those terrified eyes still searching for reassurance, but even as Jake opened his mouth to speak, self-doubt wrapped around him. What if I can't protect him? He felt the fog of uncertainty creep in. The very idea made his blood run cold, tightening around his throat. It felt like the dark was listening, delighting in his fear. "Keep going, you have to," but the words caught in his throat, turning to vapor as the shadows lurched forward. A low growl resonated, rolling through the field with an urging malevolence. Clawing hands of shadow reached for him, desperate to claim what they desired. With a primal instinct igniting deep within him, Jake spun his body towards the dark whisperings. He thrust the shard of the lantern out before him, its glimmer flickering uncertainly. "We will not be taken." His yell rippled through the cornfield, defiance cutting through terror. The shadows momentarily recoiled, and the boy surged forward, propelled by fear. Jake watched as the gap seemed to widen between them and whatever gnawed and scratched in the black void. But that fleeting victory was shattered as the shadows merged again, forming into a hideous face that loomed closer, a twisted mockery of humanity. "Do you think light can save you?" it hissed, words slithering through the dry air. Jagged teeth gleamed, and in them, Jake saw despair reflected his own, and that of the boy beside him. The boy's grip on Jake tightened, a desperate plea as he gasped, "Don't let it take me. Please." Jake felt his heart lurch. "I want." But the shadows worked harder than anyone could fathom. The ground beneath them began to quake violently, shifting like its own living entity, a vortex of dread threatening to swallow them whole. He stumbled forward, urging the boy along. They needed to reach that sliver of dawn, the gap in the corn that offered a promise of escape. "Run," he shouted, each syllable a stab in the air, forcing them to keep moving, keep trying. But as they ran, ghostly laughter returned, circling them like a predator stalking its prey. "You can't run from what you are. You belong to the darkness." "No!" Jake howled, desperation fueling his movements, pushing through the fraying grip of fear enveloping them. Suddenly, the defiance felt weak, like whimpers of light flickering in shadowy depths. Would they ever see safety again? Was there a way through this? He had to believe. They had to get through. The path twisted, and Jake fought against it, but it felt like quicksand. Each step became heavier, dragging him back with cold hands of night. We're almost there. Keep moving. With a surge of adrenaline, they barreled toward the narrow opening, but the shadows spiraled with renewed vigor. The boy stumbled, nearly falling, and Jake's world slowed for a heartbeat as he reached out, grasping the boy's arm tightly. Together, he urged, feeling their breaths quicken, every pulse against the encroaching night. The shadows shifted again, pressing in with a hungry rage, hungry for them. You cannot choose for him. You will lose everything. Something deep flared in Jake, a ferocity ignited by their bond. I want to lose him. Darkness encased their vision, swirling violently, boiling in on itself like water flooding the shore as he felt something sinister shift behind him again. Run! Together they plunged forward toward that shimmer, but before they could reach it, a deafening roar erupted, an inhuman sound that rattled the corn stalks and shook the marrow of his bones. Jake stopped, the acrid stench of fear curling in his nostrils. There, just beyond the simple veil of corn, he knew they were not alone. Jake, what's happening? The boy whimpered, eyes wide with terror. Jake swallowed, feeling his heart pound in his ears. In that moment, he grasped the cold, sharp reality that they were too close to the edge. What has to happen next? He wondered, but the answer hung in the chilling air as they waited, uncertain. And then the shadows peeled back just enough for Jake to glimpse what lurked beyond the reality of what they would have to face. The question echoed off the walls of darkness, weighing heavier every second. Would that glimpse be their undoing? Before he could think further, the shadows lunged forward, a suffocating flood, pulling them into the depths of a nightmare. Jake steeled himself against the darkness, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach as he wondered what horrors lay ahead. What would it cost them to escape? What price would the darkness demand? The shadows writhed around Jake and the boy, fierce and overwhelming, but with every pulse of fear, a flicker of resilience ignited within Jake's heart. He wouldn't let these wraiths win. With a mighty heave, he thrust the lantern shard ahead, the glint a buoy of hope amidst the encroaching void. Stay close, he shouted, dragging the boy along as he sprinted towards the glimmer of light that promised safety. Shadows darted around them, grasping like icy fingers clawing for their legs. Each howl of the dark twisted their resolve but steadied Jake's mind, forming a singular objective: survival. As they plowed through the cornfield, the oppressive laughter crescendoed into a cacophony of despair. You can't escape your fate. Shut up. Jake screamed, the sound escaping his lips raw and desperate. He could feel his breaths quickening, heart racing with an unyielding rhythm. The boy beside him began to falter, fear stealing his strength. Jake, I can't. I'm so tired. Jake's grip on his small hand tightened. You can. He shouted, each word a lifeline. Just a little further. But as they pressed onward, an insistent tug from the shadows latched onto them, an energy wrapping tight around their feet. The air grew thick, palpable dread mirroring the tension fueling Jake's urgency. Suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed through the dark, and those malevolent figures surged closer, their claw-like fingers stretching toward the boys, hungry for despair. You will never escape. You'll join us. The shadows shrieked in unison. No. Jake yelled, propelled by an instinct he couldn't fully grasp. He focused on the boy's face. Those frightened eyes, they needed to find a way to survive together. Remember. No one should be afraid. With newfound determination, Jake plowed through the corn, pushing past the wavering stalks that seemed to conspire against him. The way ahead grew arched and twisted, a labyrinth designed to ensnare them. Jake! The boy cried out in anguish as they stumbled upon a clearing. The moon loomed above, peeking through a canopy of leaves, casting an ethereal glow upon a rundown shack that could either save them or lead them deeper into the thrall of darkness. "Let us hide!" Jake shouted, a wild hope blooming amidst the chaos, and they dashed inside the dilapidated structure. The weather-beaten boards creaked underfoot, sounding an eerie welcome as they slipped inside. "There's still light," Jake gasped, catching sight of the lantern shards still glimmering faintly in the corners, weak yet full of potential. "We can use this." The boy nodded, trembling but resolute. "What do we do?" His voice was barely a whisper. "We're going to fight," Jake stated, his determination flaring like the shards around them. "Whatever happens, we face it together." With shaking hands, they prepared to use each glowing shard as a beacon, a rallying point against the darkness pressing at their backs. The guttural bellows grew nearer, more insistent. "Defy us, and you perish." The voice boomed, slicing through the air, filling the boys with trepidation. But as the shadows crept closer, a powerful wave of defiance surged through Jake. "We will never succumb," he bellowed, the boy echoing the sentiment in a fervent cry of affirmation. The shadows shuddered, caught off guard by the unexpected resilience, and for a moment, an opening appeared, a chance to slip through. "Follow me," Jake shouted, lunging toward the narrow gap in the darkened corner, the boy at his heels. Together, they darted forward through the shadows, their spirits reinvigorated by resolve. "We're almost there," Jake urged, mustering every ounce of energy and willpower as they dashed into the unknown. Outside, the air felt alive as they emerged from the confines of the shadows. But ahead lay the field again, more twisted now than before. They could hear the wails of the haunted corn, yet light streamed from the horizon hinting at dawn. "We can make it," the boy yelled, and with that call, they raced toward the illuminating edge, every beat of their hearts synced with hope and defiance. At last, as they approached the clearing where the sun began to rise, Jake knew they were nearing freedom. The shadows surged in one last, desperate attempt to reclaim their prey, surging toward them with furious intent. "Together!" Jake shouted, building the remnants of their airy defiance as they reached the boundary line of the cornfield. The darkness pulsated, a beast in the last throes of its life. But just then, as they lunged into the open field, that last barrier broke like glass, as beams of sun shattered the darkness, forcing the shadows to retreat with furious shrieks. "No!" The darkness flailed, unable to hold on to its grasp. "You will pay for this." With the first rays of light, Jake and the boy felt the shadows dissipate, fading into nothing, their power stripped away. As dawn broke, they collapsed onto the ground, panting, eyes wide with disbelief. They had survived. "Are they gone?" the boy asked, voice trembling. "I think so," Jake exhaled, the weight slowly lifting from his shoulders. "We are free." In that moment, the fog of despair roiling inside them dissipated, leaving a fresh clarity. Each breath was a reminder of their triumph, the strength forged through fear and hardship. As they rose, they could see the farm beyond, the silhouettes of familiar figures emerging from the shadows of the trees. The warm sunlight bathed them in hope, life wrapped around them like a comforting embrace. Jake looked at the boy, and they shared a knowing smile. They had faced darkness together and survived. In that shared victory, they understood the importance of love, trust, and, most importantly, the light that could break through the darkest corners of life. "Let us go home," Jake said with renewed vigor, and they walked forward, hand in hand, into the new dawn. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It seriously makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know how important your support is.